A new report from Punchbowl News says that Amazon is looking to avoid the blame for raising prices as a result of President Trump's new tariff.
Donald Trump today about to impose a 200% tariff on John Deere's import.
Alarmingly, a massive exodus of giants is taking place right on the home turf of the United States, the world's largest economy. Pressure from increasingly harsh tariff policies. Inflationary storms push production costs skyrocketing. Global supply chains are constantly disrupted. All of this is like a blow to strangle business operations. A series of industrial giants are rushing to find a way to leave the U.S., shifting investment to safer markets. A scary domino effect spreads. Millions of workers lose their jobs. The U.S. economy faces unprecedented challenges in modern history. So, who are the names leading the wave of withdrawal from this chaotic U.S.? After leaving this huge market, where will they choose to go? The list of the top 5 U.S. companies looking to flee will surprise you. One is the king of soft drinks, Coca-Cola, considering leaving the U.S. Under pressure from the 25% tariff policy on imported aluminum under President Donald Trump, Coca-Cola, an iconic American brand, is facing difficult choices, raising prices, switching materials, and even leaving its homeland. Remember the case of Carrefour, a large retail chain in Europe, which stopped selling Pepsi products because it could not bear the price increase. That situation warned that if the manufacturer and distributor do not agree, the consumers will be the ones most affected. For its part, Coca-Cola has tried to hold its ground, maintaining stable relationships with suppliers and using financial instruments to hedge against price fluctuations. But at some point, when all efforts fail to stem the storm of costs, price increases become inevitable. And a scenario of Coca-Cola leaving America could happen in the future. Coca-Cola is considering moving its headquarters and production chain out of the U.S., a scenario that has never happened in the brand's more than 100-year history. The reason? Coca-Cola operates as a network that relies heavily on free trade, not confined to the borders of the United States. Aluminum from Canada, used to make billions of cans each year, suddenly skyrocketed in price. Sweeteners from Latin America are taxed, and their prices are inflated. Flavors from Asia, machinery from Europe, and cross-border marketing services are all heavily affected. Each tariff line that Mr. Trump imposes on countries is like a clamp strangling Coca-Cola's business activities. The result? Companies like Coca-Cola, which rely on global supply chains, are caught in the middle of a cost storm. In particular, the price of aluminum, a key ingredient in billions of cans each year, has skyrocketed several times over due to U.S. import tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. CEO James Quincy will have to find ways to cut costs by using more plastic, which is more harmful to the environment, if aluminum cans become more expensive because of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. We can't absorb these costs forever. It's either a big price increase or we lose market share. There's no easy choice, Quincy said bluntly. In addition to switching to more plastic packaging, Quincy said Coca-Cola could mitigate the impact of the tax by seeking domestic sources of aluminum and increasing prices to customers. Like a domino effect, this causes operating costs to escalate, profit margins to tighten. And the option of raising prices becomes dangerous in a context where consumers are increasingly tightening their purse strings. Coca-Cola was forced to choose, stay and die slowly, or leave to survive. With a global manufacturing network, Coca-Cola is well positioned to relocate its operations to a country with a more stable trade environment and favorable tax rates, such as Ireland, the Netherlands, or Singapore. If Coca-Cola leaves, it would be a historic blow to America's image. One of its most iconic brands would no longer call America home. The U.S. economy is certain to face disaster. Coca-Cola is not only a direct employer of thousands of jobs, but also a major supplier to its manufacturing plants, distributors, and retail stores. When this giant leaves, its partners, employees, and communities around Atlanta will be severely affected. Not only will jobs be lost, but the economic network that has been built over decades will be disrupted. Not only that, Coca-Cola's relocation could be a major turning point for the global economic picture. The U.S., which has long been considered a fertile land for multinational corporations, could lose its attractive position, causing many other companies to rethink their operations here. The technology, pharmaceutical, and automobile industries will also have to consider more carefully their global strategies. As a result, the real estate market, the labor market, and even the working culture in the U.S. could be deeply affected. Perhaps the most notable aspect is the cultural and spiritual aspect. Coca-Cola is not just a brand, it is a symbol of America around the world. Its departure, even if only strategic, raises questions about America's soft power in the era of globalization. This can be seen as a blow to national pride, at the same time shaking the belief in the connection between big businesses and the country. For American policymakers, this event is like a clear warning. If we do not change to keep the big guys in place, America may gradually lose its leading position in the global economy. Coca-Cola isn't the only big name considering leaving. And the next name, if confirmed, could shake the entire retail market. 2. Walmart's continuous store closures and skyrocketing prices have the president speaking out. It's hard to believe, but America's national retail icon, Walmart, is shockingly closing stores one after another, leaving many communities with lost town centers in the process. Most recently, 3 stores in Lincolnwood, Plainfield, and Homewood officially closed. In Homewood, Mayor Rich Hofeld couldn't hide his anger. Walmart isn't just a store, it's a livelihood for hundreds of families. They're leaving an economic and social void. Not stopping there, Walmart announced the closure of 2 more stores in San Diego, raising concerns of a nationwide exodus. Meanwhile, prices at remaining stores have skyrocketed, something that was once taboo for the everyday low prices brand. The situation began to get serious in mid-May 2025 when Walmart CEO Doug McMillon sent out a worrying message. Prices will increase across the board due to the new tariffs President Trump is imposing, especially on Chinese goods. The tariffs, which at one point reached 145%, were gradually reduced to 30%, but were still too high for Walmart to absorb without raising prices. We will try to keep prices as low as possible, but with tariffs as high as they are, even after they were reduced this week, we cannot absorb the full cost because retail margins are already very low, Walmart CEO Douglas McMillon said during the company's earnings call. On CNBC, Chief Financial Officer John David Rainey said the adjustment will begin before the end of May, and prices will rise much more sharply in June. Now, not just one, but almost every item in the giant retail chain Walmart is escalating at a dizzying pace. A tub of butter that used to cost just a few dollars has now skyrocketed by nearly 1.5 times. Even seemingly unchangeable items like children's toys, laptops, and televisions are not immune to the spiral. A typical example: Barbie dolls increased in price from $10.49 to $14.99 in just a few short days. Consumers were stunned. A mother of 3 in suburban Houston stood dumbfounded in front of the diaper counter at Walmart. The box of Pampers that was $24 last week has now jumped to $31. Consumers are confused. The president is angry. On May 17th, Mr. Trump posted on the social network Truth Social, Walmart should stop blaming tariffs for price increases across the retail chain. Walmart made billions of dollars last year, far exceeding expectations. U.S. President Donald Trump said Walmart should shoulder the blame, rather than blame tariffs imposed by his administration on imports for raising the retailer's prices. But in reality, it is not that simple. Walmart may leave the U.S., shift supplies for survival. The iconic American retailer Walmart cannot stay out of the tax avoidance game. Walmart is quietly restructuring globally. Instead of sticking with American suppliers as before, the company is now shifting orders to Vietnam, India, and Mexico, which are not affected by tariffs. The packaging has also changed from shiny aluminum packaging to neatly molded fiberglass panels that are lighter and harder to detect to avoid taxes. We just got a cut in shifts because of the huge drop in shipments from China, sighed an employee at a Texas distribution center. I'm thinking about going to truck driving school, hoping for something more stable. To cut costs, Walmart is investing heavily in robotics, AI, and automation across its stores. On the surface, it's an innovation, but in reality, it's a job-cutting jobs, a blow to the working class, which has already been hurt by the pandemic. President Trump called it a betrayal of American workers. He even threatened to cancel government contracts with Walmart. But CEO McMillan responded, "We're not leaving America. We're doing everything we can to survive this uncertain tariff environment." Walmart's finances are still alive, sales are up, profits are down. But the truth is that prices are up, spending is down, and consumer confidence is down. According to a Morning Consult survey, 75% of Americans say tariffs are the main cause of rising prices. When Walmart changes, the entire community suffers. In many rural towns, Walmart is more than just a place to shop. It is a job, a local tax, and the heart of the community. When a store closes, the entire ecosystem around it falters. When was the last time you shopped at Walmart without looking twice at the price? That's America's problem. Not only the retail industry, but more worryingly, even America's agricultural legend is no longer strong enough to survive on its own land. 3. John Deere hit by Trump's 200% tax. Plans to build new factory in Mexico. Shocking news. President Donald Trump has announced a 200% tariff on John Deere products if the company continues with its plans to move some of its production to Mexico. John Deere, an icon of American agriculture, has decided to close 5 plants in the United States, resulting in the loss of about 14,000 jobs. At the same time, they announced plans to build a new plant in Ramos Arizpe, Mexico, with an investment of $55 million. The plant is expected to produce mini loaders and compact track loaders, serving the growing Latin American market. The company stressed that the decision is to optimize the supply chain and meet global demand. At the same time, it affirmed that more than 75% of products sold in the United States are still made domestically. However, the decision led to the layoff of hundreds of workers at plants in Iowa and Illinois, causing a wave of protests from workers and political leaders. At an agricultural event in Pennsylvania, Mr. Trump declared, "If you move your production to Mexico, we will put a 200% tariff on everything you sell into the United States." He accused John Deere of harming American workers and betraying our country. It was the first time Trump had directly targeted a farm equipment maker, expanding his hardline trade strategy. Billionaire Mark Cuban called Trump's proposal insane and warned that it could destroy a legendary American company. Economists also worry that the high tariffs would increase the price of farm equipment, making it difficult for American farmers, and could violate international trade agreements like the USMCA. John Deere Representative Jennifer Hartman asserted that the expansion into Mexico affects less than 5% of North American production and is part of the company's globalization strategy. She stressed that the company remains strongly committed to manufacturing in the United States, with more than $2 billion invested in domestic plants since 2019. The confrontation between Trump and John Deere has divided the American farming community. Some support Trump because they believe he will protect domestic jobs, while others worry that tariffs will increase production costs and negatively affect their income. John Deere's decision to move some production to Mexico was not a quick turnaround. It was the result of months of intense debate behind closed doors, where company executives were forced to confront cold numbers. Numbers that change loyalties. According to the latest internal report from the group, in fiscal year 2025, John Deere is estimated to incur more than $500 million in tariff-related costs. In the first quarter of 2025, costs increased by more than $130 million. The loss is expected to exceed $520 million for the full year of 2025 if the tariffs are maintained or extended to Mexico, where John Deere is expanding production. Manufacturing costs in the United States have skyrocketed. Domestic supply chains are increasingly unstable. Skilled labor is scarce. Meanwhile, Asian competitors like Kubota, Japan, and Mahindra, India, have mastered the art of low-cost, efficient manufacturing. They are faster, cheaper, and more flexible. John Deere had little choice. It had to race to catch up, and Mexico became a strategic destination. Labor costs were 70% lower than in the United States. The workforce was highly skilled, and logistics infrastructure was easy to come by. And especially quick access to fast-growing markets like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, where agriculture was not just growing, but booming. Key products such as large tractors, combines, and industrial-scale harvesters will continue to be produced in Iowa, Illinois, and other U.S. plants. We are not leaving America. We are preparing to conquer the world. That is the implicit message that Deere wants to send. The company that suffered the most damage from Mr. Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs also had to grit its teeth and make a painful decision, closing a series of factories. Ford Motor Company, symbol of the American auto industry, is in turmoil. The 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, initially announced by President Donald Trump as a shield to protect American manufacturing, has now become an invisible knife to the auto industry. On May 5th, U.S. automaker Ford reported a shocking 65% drop in first quarter profits, citing a short-term slowdown in sales due to new model launches, and announcing it was withdrawing its financial forecast due to the uncertainty surrounding tariffs. The automaker estimated that the various tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump since returning to the White House in January would result in a net loss of about $1.5 billion to adjusted operating income for the full year 2025. Tariffs are seen as a strategic play. Put pressure on China, squeeze Mexico, and regain America's manufacturing edge. But in the auto industry, where a car is the product of thousands of components from 3 countries, it's an incredibly dangerous gamble. Ford, which makes 80% of its cars domestically, relies heavily on components from Mexico and China: chassis, batteries, and semiconductors. Parts from Mexico cost 25% more. Cars assembled in Canada are taxed at the border. Batteries and chips from China are taxed up to 30%. And now each imported screw adds 25% to the cost. Add it all up, and a Bronco can cost thousands of dollars more. And Ford had a choice: raise prices or shut down. They chose both. On May 17th, Ford shocked the nation when it announced it would close some of its most iconic assembly lines in the United States. The Chicago plant, where the Ford Explorer and Lincoln Aviator once churned out thousands of vehicles, fell silent. The Michigan assembly plant, which made the Bronco and Ranger, shut down. And with that, thousands of workers were told, "Go home. Wait for the call. No one knows when it will come." At a factory in suburban Chicago, mechanic Marcus usually starts his shift at 6 a.m. But on the morning of May 17th, Marcus didn't show up for work. Instead, he and hundreds of other workers stood outside the gate, holding their notices of resignation, staring at the silent, glass-fronted assembly line where thousands of SUVs are churned out every day. Not because of war, not because of a pandemic, but because of a policy blow coming from within. Ford is not alone in this crisis. Onan, GM, Stellantis, Toyota, Honda, all are caught in the whirlwind. Nissan canceled orders from Mexico. General Motors moved production to Indiana but had to cut costs elsewhere. Factories in Ohio, Kentucky, and Ontario began laying off workers. In 1 week, nearly 10,000 jobs were lost. In Kokomo, a sandwich shop that used to stay open late to serve the night shift closed early because no one was ordering at 2 a.m. The ripple effects rippled through the community, but the pain was felt directly in Michigan and Indiana, where 900 workers at component factories were laid off overnight. In places like Kokomo and Toledo, factories closed and assembly lines were wiped out. Workers who had been retained through the Great Recession were the first to be cut. And as they left, the grocery stores, barbershops, and gas stations that had sustained local communities began to die. Ford tried to hold out. It responded with emergency price increases. The Mustang Mach-E Maverick, Bronco Sport, all models assembled in Mexico, suddenly cost nearly $2,000 more. It wasn't just a number, it was a shock. For customers, it was a surprise hit. Ford executives sounded the alarm. The next round of cuts could be more severe. Tariffs have sent the cost of everything from steel to microchips skyrocketing. A Lincoln Nautilus imported from China is now too expensive to stand next to its rivals in showrooms. Exports to China have been completely cut off, shutting the door to one of the world's biggest markets. The message is clear: the trade war is no longer theoretical. It is real, and it is destroying. Trump's response? A shrug. When asked about Ford's shutdown, he said, "It should have happened a long time ago. They should have brought it back home." It was a chilling statement that echoed throughout the auto industry. If Ford couldn't be protected, who could? And then consumers felt the pain. New car prices jumped 2.5% in April, the most in years. Buyers rushed to close deals before the next hike. But cars were scarce. Deliveries were delayed. Parking lots that had once been packed were empty. CEO Jim Farley tried to boost morale by calling it the fairest fight in decades. But behind the scenes, Ford was quietly adjusting forecasts, cutting targets, and trying to appease shareholders, while a painful reality emerged. Even with 80% of its production in the United States, Ford was still losing money. Auto stocks are plummeting. Analysts warn that without change, the industry could lose more than 1 million vehicle sales this year alone. How worrying! 5. Amazon, challenges and secret projects. Silver Compass withdraws from the US. Once a symbol of innovation and relentless growth, Amazon is now going through a tumultuous period in the US. Is Amazon fleeing the domestic market? Amazon is trying to avoid being blamed for price increases due to President Trump's new tariffs. Amazon considered displaying the additional tariff costs on some items. Then, on the morning of April 29th, President Trump called Jeff Bezos. Of course, Trump was furious. Speaking at a press briefing the same day, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called it hostile and politically motivated. She said that if Amazon disclosed the cost of tariffs, it would be tantamount to blaming the government for rising prices. While the company did not do so when the Joe Biden administration pushed inflation to a 40-year high. President Donald Trump confirmed that he had spoken directly with billionaire Jeff Bezos about the issue. Jeff Bezos was very nice. He was great. He solved the problem very quickly. Good guy, Trump told reporters. He also said the call went very well. However, Amazon has been struggling since the president's tariff policy. The Wall Street Journal, WSJ, said that the stock price of e-commerce company Amazon has evaporated 9% since U.S. President Donald Trump's reciprocal tax was announced. Since the beginning of the year, the total market capitalization of this e-commerce company has evaporated $740 billion USD. Numbers don't lie. Amazon announced in early 2025 that it would cut 14,000 management positions, or 13% of its global management workforce, in a move that is expected to save $2.1 billion, $3.6 billion a year, and increase the ratio of direct employees to managers to at least 15%. As you add more people, you get more middle managers, and they, even with good intentions, want to leave their mark everywhere, says CEO Andy Jassy. Heavy investment in artificial intelligence and automation has made many management positions redundant. Amazon isn't just cutting jobs, it's also closing or scaling back projects like its Try Before You Buy service and its fast delivery stores. Divisions like Prime Video, Twitch, and Amazon Games have also seen hundreds of employees laid off. Notably during the 2024 holiday season, which is traditionally Amazon's golden season, more than 10,000 workers at distribution centers in California, Georgia, Illinois, and New York went on strike. They not only demanded higher wages, but also improved working conditions in the warehouse, which was described as like a giant machine with no time to breathe. We don't want to cause a stir, but after 8 years of working here, my salary has only gone up a few bucks, said Maria Lopez, a 37-year-old worker in downtown Staten Island, New York. I used to be proud to work for Amazon, but now I'm just exhausted. Although Amazon has said its operations are not affected, observers say this is a clear sign of discontent brewing within the e-commerce giant. Experts say e-commerce is predicted to be the sector most heavily affected in the context of the escalating US-China trade war. About 70% of the products sold on Amazon are made in China, according to an analysis by investment bank Wedbush. Sellers of these items are struggling to decide whether to raise prices to offset rising import costs. Prices on some items on Amazon have increased since then. Vogue handbags, for example, have gone from $90 to $95. Chinese furniture company Havenly has also started charging a 7.5% import fee per item on some of its products. Not stopping at imposing tariffs, the U.S. Congress decided to abolish the de minimis rule, which allows low-value goods to be exempt from import duties. For Amazon, this rule is the backbone of the entire globalized business model. Millions of cheap products from China, Vietnam, India pour into the U.S. quickly, efficiently, and at unprecedented low prices. But as import costs skyrocketed, with tariffs sometimes as high as 140%, Amazon understood that the ecosystem it had worked so hard to build had been undermined by the U.S. government. There was no more cost optimization, no more super flexible supply chain. And most importantly, trust in the business environment was broken. They must find a way out of these difficulties. Project Silver Compass, Amazon's escape map. Since 2022, Amazon has been quietly implementing a secret project called Project Silver Compass, which is considered a strategic plan to escape the growing difficulties in the U.S. Silver Compass's goal is to identify locations with favorable business environments, low operating costs, favorable tax policies, modern technology infrastructure, and strong support from local governments. After months of surveying, the two cities of Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, emerged as the most promising candidates. It is no coincidence that Amazon has been aggressively expanding AWS, cloud computing services, in the UAE since 2022, while hiring hundreds of engineers in the Middle East, accelerating logistics and warehousing investments in the Persian Gulf region. Some senior employees have even been rotated to Abu Dhabi under special R&D projects. If giants like Amazon, John Deere, or Walmart start looking for ways to escape from harsh tariff policies, the world's #1 economic power will fall into a disaster. It is not only a matter of losing factories, data centers, and thousands of jobs, but also a warning of a serious economic recession when supply chains are broken, competitiveness is weakened, and global leadership is shaken. The protectionist policy that was supposed to protect the domestic economy may now become a double-edged sword, forcing the big guys to find a way to run away. When the American eagles begin to leave the nest, who will be strong enough to maintain the leading position of the world's #1 economy? What we share in the video is the result of synthesizing and analyzing from many different perspectives to give you a true slice of the current picture. However, for a more comprehensive and objective view, please refer to other official and multidimensional sources of information.